Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Sports Mole's Football Shorts. I'm Barney Corkhill. I'm here with our football editor Matt Law, and we're here to discuss game week 20 predictions for the Premier League season. Matt is now 27 points ahead in the grand scheme of things. Actually got a very good record, to be fair to him. In the last four of the last game week, got three spot on, Matt.
Yeah, 3 of last 4, we're just talking, weren't we? Which is pleasing, and obviously, 27 points, bit of ground for you to make up. But listen, there's still a lot of football to be played, and then
there is starting this weekend, and we start this midweek round of fixtures. And on Tuesday, today is a London derby between Crystal Palace and West Ham. West Ham in great form, 100% record so far in 2021. Crystal Palace in not such good form. How do you see this one going, Matt?
it's a huge game, isn't it? I think West Ham will go up into fourth, won't they, if they were to win this game? Obviously, playing ahead of a lot of the teams, replace Liverpool in the top 4, which is, if you'd have said that at the start of the season to West Ham fans, I mean, I know there's talk about a new contract for David Moyes, and I think his current deal's up this summer, but there is a 12-month extension possibility, but they want to do a longer-term deal, which doesn't surprise me. And I think he's got his mojo back, really, hasn't he, David Moyes? After he's had a few tough spells, like we all know where he's been, but it's just a lot going right for West Ham. But obviously, I think the interesting thing looks like they're trying to sign Lingard, doesn't it? But they've obviously they have at the moment 2 domestic loans, so it looks like they're going to have to turn the Ben Rama one into a permanent deal this month rather than wait until the summer, just so they can, if they were to bring Lingard in. And for me, that'd be an excellent signing for West Ham. I think he's a player, obviously, David Moyes does know, and he needs a fresh start. And if he were to come in and another striker, I think West Ham could make a real push for the top 7 this season, top 7, top 6, if they were to do that. Palace, on the other hand, I think the main bit of news ahead of this game for me that was James Tompkins being injured, because when Tompkins plays at Palace, they always look a lot more solid. I think he's a really good defender. Obviously, against his former club would be important. And Palace's form recently, and obviously no FA Cup game, did they? Because they got knocked out by Wolves, drew at Arsenal, great result, and then hit by 4 at City, which obviously it's a tough place to go, but wasn't great. Obviously, Zaha didn't play in that game, and when he doesn't play, Palace, obviously it takes a lot away from them. And I struggled with this one. I was going to go West Ham, but everything seems to be pointing to West Ham, the form book and everything else. But to go to Palace is still a very difficult place. A lot of big teams struggle there, and I've just gone to draw in the end. I think it'll be a tight game. Obviously, London derby, no fans, but it's still a derby, still a tough game for West Ham, and it'd be a big. If West Ham were to go there and win, that'd be incredibly impressive. But yeah, just a draw here, 1-1.
Well, no, yeah, I've gone for West Ham in this one. As you say, most things, certainly the form book points towards it. 5 wins in a row for West Ham. They're flying at the moment. And while, those wins haven't been entirely convincing, some of them 1-0 against Everton, 1-0 against Burnley, 2-1 against West Brom. So they're rather scraping these wins, 1-0 against Stockport in the Cup as well. So apart from that one last time out in the FA Cup where they beat Doncaster quite comfortably in the FA Cup, they haven't been convincing victories in terms of the scoreline, but they've still been doing what they need to do to get the wins. And you're right to say Palace are capable of decent results at home, obviously taking points off Tottenham and Leicester fairly recently at home. And most recently in the last home league game beats Sheffield United 2-0. Obviously Sheffield United down at the bottom. So West Ham will be a much bigger test than that. But they've also got those results like the defeat to Newcastle at home recently, 7-0 loss to Liverpool, obviously. So they're capable of some pretty poor results at home as well. I think just the form West Ham are in at the moment, they're flying. They've got so many options. You saw in the FA Cup game, they rotated guys a lot, brought in some players like Yarmolenko, who don't really get too much of a look in, certainly from the start in the Premier League, but still really good, impressive players who could be match winners. And they've got that sort of depth, which I agree. I think they could be pushing for those top 6 places this season for sure. They certainly are at the moment. And I can see them getting another win here. They'll be just full of confidence at the moment. And in their current form compared to Crystal Palace's current form off the back of 4-0 defeat to Man City, no goals in their last 3 games across all competitions, just backing West Ham to win this one. I've gone for a 2-1 win in this one. Also this evening at 6 p.m. is Newcastle versus Leeds, 2 teams with 0% record so far in 2021, lost every single game they've played so far this calendar year across all competitions. So both in desperate need of a victory, really. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, this is a really tough one. I've gone back and forth on this one. I've actually got a goalless draw in the end. Look at their form recently. Newcastle, I've seen quite a bit of Newcastle recently, and just the Villa game. I mean, we both back 2-0 Villa in that game, didn't they? Not really much happened. Because obviously Steve Bruce has started to select a more attacking team, but Andy Carroll's not really he's not the same player as that he was when he was at his absolute towering best. He was such a force every time he played. Obviously, Callum Wilson, we spoke about. They've got good players, Newcastle. I don't think it is so much the personnel. Obviously, St. Maximum being back in and around the squad is obviously huge for them moving forward, and he'll improve them, no doubt. But Leeds recently have been very odd, haven't they? They've obviously lost the last three. The Crawley game, lost 3-0 to Tottenham, and then 1-0 at home to Brighton last time out. Again, haven't been in FA Cup action, so it will be a 10-day break between games, which is probably it is a good thing, I think, at this stage of the season, because there has been a lot of football and especially the way Leeds play, we all it's high energy. And yeah, I really struggled with this one, to be honest. I was trying to make a case for either. I did go Leeds at the start, but I just was going to go them 1-0. But they haven't really been playing well recently. The goals, Bamford. If Bamford doesn't score, you're struggling really to see where the goals are coming from. And Newcastle, again, we said it last time, didn't we? It's so difficult to back them just because they're just really struggling, aren't they? I mean, what Newcastle in the table went down in 16th and obviously 7 points above the bottom three. I mean, you look at Leeds up in 12th. I think that's a great, first half of the season for a newly promoted club. But I just think recently they haven't been great and, goalless here.
Yeah, I think these games between two teams out of form are always pretty difficult to call. But I think if you look at the perception of these two seasons, and I know Newcastle recently have been really poor, no wins in 10. And away from home, in all competitions away from home, it's now 4 games without a goal. At home, they do tend to score, so I have backed them to get on the score sheet here. But if they were to win here, they'd go within 1 point of Leeds. And when you consider Leeds are still getting a fair few plaudits for the way they're playing and everything like that, and it is obviously their first season back in the top flight, it's quite easy to forget that with a team like Leeds, the size of the club they are, and sort of the expectations on their shoulders heading into this season, when lots of people were backing them for a top half finish, even in their first season back in. So you do need to remember this is their first season back in the Premier League. But, the perception is certainly Newcastle are only going in one direction at the moment. Steve Bruce, the pressure is piling on him with every single game, with every single defeat at the moment. But victory takes them within 1 point of Leeds. So when you consider the plaudits Leeds have got, that's not too bad for Newcastle. I don't see them getting that win. I've just sided on Leeds like you. It's a really tough one to call. I do see Newcastle getting on the score sheet, which they haven't managed to recently. Being back at home tends to help them with that. But Leeds, I'm backing them to win this one 2-1. I think we've mentioned it a few times with Leeds. You just don't know what sort of scoreline's going to be thrown up. They can beat West Brom 5-0 in their last game of 2020, and then the first few days of 2021 they lose back-to-back 3-0 ones against Tottenham and then Crawley Town, and obviously the home defeat against Brighton last time out was really disappointing performance and result for them. So I think the pressure is starting to grow on them to start picking up results again. But then again, if they were to finish in 12th, as you mentioned, they probably would regard that as a decent first season back at the top flight. So certainly not panic stations yet. And I can see them getting back to winning ways here. Two teams without so much as a point so far in 2021, but I can see Leeds ending that and winning 2-1 in this one. Also this evening, we've got West Brom versus Manchester City. Man City in really good form at the moment. They can again go top of the league momentarily at least with a victory here. West Brom down in 19th place. Lost to West Ham last time out, but did beat Wolves in the Black Country Derby before that to give themselves a bit of hope. But at home, they've just been so much poorer than they have been away from home so far. 17 goals conceded in their last 4 home games, which is incredible, really. And they've only scored 1 goal in reply in that time. And the last thing you need when that's happening is Man City in this sort of form coming into town. Obviously, Man City without Kevin De Bruyne, which is big for them. It looks like probably still without Sergio Aguero as well. So their goal threat should be limited a little bit by that. But the form Man City are in, you'd back them probably against any team in the league at the moment, yet alone a West Brom team struggling so much at home. So yeah, I've gone for a pretty comfortable Man City winning this one. Toyed with going a bit more, but I've reined it into 3-0 to Man City in this one.
3-0, yeah. I've gone 2-0 City. Yeah, same as you, really, for the same reasons. Just obviously had a bit of a scare, didn't they? City in the FA Cup by Cheltenham, were 1-0 down, but came through quite comfortably in the end. And like you say, obviously Kevin De Bruyne being out and for a little while as well. He's obviously looking ahead. I mean, they play Liverpool, don't they? February the 7th, so it's obviously not that long away, and that's going to be obviously a huge game. Liverpool, you fancy they might have sorted things out by then. Hopefully not, but they might be playing themselves into a bit of form by then. It's obviously going to be a very tough game. But yeah, it is difficult. These are the games you do sometimes get surprise results, and and you can throw up. I mean, it's very interesting since Sam Allardyce has gone there. I think there was maybe a perception that Bilic was slightly underperforming with that group of players, but I just think they are where they are, really, aren't they? The quality. It's a championship squad, really. I think you look at it, you look at players like, I think Pereira obviously is one that stands out for me. He was excellent in the championship. He's been really good recently, isn't he? Really among the goals. But you just look through the side and it's just a really good It's almost like Norwich. Norwich have obviously gone down and now they're excellent in the championship. They've got a really good group of championship players, and that's maybe been a little bit harsh, but I think that's just what they are, West Brom, unfortunately. And obviously, I thought they were better against West Ham last time out. It was obviously a tight game, only lost 2-1, as you say. But yeah, I'm really struggling here. It's pretty comfortable. This probably isn't the main talking point for this week in terms of games. I think it's going to be quite comfortable. I've gone 2-0 City.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that West Brom obviously drew at the Etihad not too long ago, back in December. So they might be confident of getting something. That ended up being Slaven Bilic's last game in charge. But Man City since then have just been in great form. I think that was the last game they failed to win, and 10 wins in a row for Man City since then across all competitions. And we're both backing them to make that 11 wins in a row at the Hawthorns. Also, the final game tonight is Southampton versus Arsenal. Second time these two teams are facing off in the space of 3 days after Southampton won the FA Cup tie between them 1-0 at the weekend. How do you see this one going?
Yes, it's always strange, isn't it, when they play obviously back-to-back games. It's happened actually a lot in Spain this week. The Copa del Rey, there's a few fixtures, league games, and then cup games straight after, which is always interesting. I think the interesting with the Southampton game is he named a strong side, didn't he, in the cup? Obviously they played Shrewsbury, didn't they? And he made changes for that game to get through to the next round, and then selected, arguably his strongest team, Ralph Hasenhuttl. Obviously Arsenal's was much changed. I think Aubameyang is still out, personal reasons. Tierney still might be a bit of a doubt, and obviously, arguably two of Arsenal's best three players with Saka, in my opinion. So it's a tough game. I mean, I was going to go Southampton. I just think they were really good at the weekend, and Arsenal, we all know this season their struggles have obviously improved recently, down in 11th at the moment. Actually, only 2 points behind Southampton in 10th, but have played a game more than the Saints. So it's a tough game. I've actually just got a draw in the end. I think, obviously there will be changes on both sides. Saka will come back in, Thomas will come back in, Lacazette, you fancy. There'll be changes for Arsenal and freshen the side up. And I just think they've got enough to get a point. Southampton's form in and out, haven't they, recently? Obviously, Danny Ings being back is a great thing for them. Obviously, there's uncertainty surrounding his future at the moment, whether he'll move on and sign into a new contract, don't they? But yeah, I just think a draw in the end, I think it'd be a tight game. If I was going to pick a winner, if I had to be pushed, I would go Southampton. But I hope it's a good game. I've gone 2-2 here.
Yeah, well, I've gone 1-1, but for pretty much exactly the same reasons. I think if there is a winner, it would probably be Southampton. And I did originally have this down as a 1-0 Southampton win. And, my gut is still saying to me that might be the result. But so often when you see these quick games in succession where the same two teams are playing each other, the second game is very rarely the same as the first. So that's what sort of led me away from 1-0. Just look at the, United Liverpool ones recently, obviously 0-0 in the league and then 3-2 in the cup, completely different games. And that tends to be the pattern. Obviously, there's no rule in place saying that is going to be the pattern, but that does tend to be the pattern, which is warned me away from a 1-0 Southampton win. So I've gone for 1-1 in the end for the same reasons as you. I can just see, there's not much separating them in the league. Obviously, you mentioned 2 points. Arsenal win this game, they go above Southampton, having played a game more, as you mentioned. But Arsenal are certainly looking a lot better now than they were a month or so ago. Their Premier League form, 4 wins and 1 draw from the last 5 games. That's really good form. And when you think, what was it, a month ago, maybe a tiny bit more than a month ago, there were, the word relegation was being used in the same sentence as Arsenal. It has been a good turnaround. Arteta certainly steadied the ship. It shows that if you give managers time, or I'm sure we'll come to that later when we talk about Chelsea and Frank Lampard, and United and Solskjaer really is another example of these club legends being given time at certain clubs. They can turn things around, and Arteta does seem to have done that. But this is a really tough game. Southampton have been really impressive this season. We've given them a lot of plaudits on this show. They've lost as many games as third place Leicester, which shows how difficult they are to beat. But yeah, I'm going for 1-1 draw in this one, same as you in terms of all square. On Wednesday night, we got Burnley versus Aston Villa. Burnley, off the back of their last league game, an incredible win at Anfield. No one really saw that coming. First team in 69 games, I think it was, to win at Anfield in the Premier League. And then back that up with a really good FA Cup win at Fulham as well, 3-0. So they finally seem to have turned the corner in terms of picking up good regular results at home, to be fair. They've been pretty decent in general, scraping victories and picking up points in the league, which has kept them clear of the relegation zone. 7 points clear of the relegation zone they are now. But Aston Villa also victorious last time out, 2-0 against Newcastle, ending a winless run of their own after quite a long time out due to COVID reasons and postponements. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, this was similar to Newcastle Leeds in terms of, one that I think required a bit more thought when picking a winner. I've actually just gone Villa in the end, 2-1 here. Obviously, as well as you mentioned, Burnley's last couple of results, obviously excellent at Liverpool and away from home, but against Fulham as well in the Cup, as you mentioned, which was a fantastic result. Obviously, both managers did make changes for that game, but I just think Villa are a proper outfit now. They're a really good side. I like the manager. I think the setup, the shape of the team, it rarely changes. Obviously, they had coronavirus issues, but if they have a fully fit squad, there's no real surprises in the team. You sort of know what team's going to be put onto the field in each week, and I think that is a huge positive because you learn patterns of play and things like that. Obviously, Ollie Watkins getting on the score sheet again against Newcastle. He'd gone a little spell without finding the back of the net, still contributing. Traore's been excellent, and obviously Grealish always gets mentioned, but Barkley coming back into the side, I thought he had these injury problems. I thought he was excellent against Newcastle, and I think it was a big win for Villa because they've gone 4 games in all competitions without a win, 3 defeats. Obviously, the Cup to Liverpool when they played a youth side, if you like, and the Manchester City game before that, obviously, because we've had 2 games since we last spoke. I mean, there was that crazy offside decision. I'll get your view on that, but I mean, I'll ask you now. I mean, that rule is a bit crazy, isn't it? Where he wasn't offside there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure you see quite a few of them. Most weekends, and they just don't get given things like that. It is a stupid rule, and I think you can justify it by the letter of the law and say it's correct, and you can sort of hide behind that excuse. But I think everyone knows that is offside. And it was a bit ridiculous that it got given, but the referees can always hide behind these sort of rules that come into play and by the letter of the law correct. But I think every football fan realised that was a bit of a joke that was given and allowed to stand.
Yeah. It was crazy, and I think it was obviously a huge moment in the game. I thought Villa were really good before that, and obviously ended up losing 2-0, which was flattered City. But yeah, I think they're a really good side now. Villa, I do like them. I think they're heading firmly in the right direction, up in 8th, and they've got talk about West Ham in 7th, but they've actually got 2 games in hand over West Ham and 3 points behind. So a lot of movement to be had. Quick turnaround for Villa. They played Burnley and Southampton away in their next game at the weekend. So it's some time then play West Ham at home start of February and then Arsenal. So it's a really big period for Villa, and we'll find out a lot about them. But yeah, I think Villa win here 2-1.
Yeah, I've gone for a Villa win as well. I've gone for 1-0. I think you mentioned a few of them there. They've just got a lot of very good players at the moment, very good attacking players as well. People who can come up with something special to win you a match. You listed a few of them. Traore's been in really good form. El Ghazi, hasn't started every game recently, but before the coronavirus outbreak was in really good form. Grealish, Watkins needs to start scoring more, but when he does start scoring more, he's shown he can do it at this level. So he's certainly up there with the match win as well. Trezeguet, I think I read a stat that he's had more shots than anyone else without scoring so far this season. So as soon as he gets that first one, you'd fancy maybe more to come because he's getting the chances. If he can start finishing them off as well, it gives them another option. And Ross Barkley as well. They've just got a lot of good players who are capable of getting on the score sheet and making a difference in games. And when you combine that with pretty good defensive solidity, certainly away from home, which is relevant coming into this game against the Burnley side who don't score too many goals, only 10 all season. With the likes of Tyrone Mings at the back, Ezri Konsa's been really good. Matty Cash, Matt Targett been really good. Emiliano Martinez in goal has been a great addition this season as well. So they've got a really good team now, Aston Villa, and it certainly compared to last season when you maybe back them to drop points in this game when they're battling against relegation, I think they certainly come into this one as favourites, even with Burnley coming into it off the back of that win against Liverpool last time out in the Premier League, and then that win against Fulham as well. So yeah, like you, I've gone for Aston Villa here. I think they've just got enough about them. They're 8th in the table, as we say, but they've got those games in hand which could catapult them right up. And I think they're very much in in the top 6 race, maybe even could be looking even a little bit higher the way they're performing if they can continue these performances over the second half of the season, which is huge credit to what they've done compared to last season when they were battling against relegation. If they are to do that, these are the sorts of games that they need to win. But yeah, we're both backing them to do that. I've gone for 1-0. Matt's gone for 2-1 to Aston Villa in that one. Also on Wednesday is Chelsea versus Wolves. Alluded to Chelsea earlier. Frank Lampard is now gone. As of yet, there's no confirmation of the new manager, but as we understand it, Thomas Tuchel will be coming in before this game takes place. Obviously, Chelsea, they've actually won 3 of the last 4 games across all competitions, but their Premier League form, 2 wins in 8, I think it is, obviously is what got Frank Lampard the axe. Wolves aren't in great form themselves. I think in the Premier League now, 6 games without a victory, seen them drop down to 14th place. So is it a relatively kind first game in charge, what we presume will be a first game in charge for Thomas Tuchel? How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's a very interesting game, isn't it? Like you say, potentially kind. You talk about Wolves are down in 14th at the moment. You know, their form hasn't been good. They've had key injuries, haven't they, to key attackers, which hasn't helped them. And yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I'm not that surprised that Lampard's gone. There's a lot of people saying they're really surprised and come as a shock. I'm not so much. I think off the back of the Leicester game in the Premier League, I didn't think Chelsea were great at all in that game. I thought they were well beat by Leicester, and obviously it's a situation where, you know, when Bilic was sacked, it wasn't because of the last game, you know, the draw that I think they drew at City, didn't they? So Lampard hasn't been sacked because of the Luton game. You know, obviously they won that game 3-1. Tammy Abraham getting a hat trick, but yeah, I mean, I was looking at the win record of Lampard, 52%. So he won 44 of his 84 games in charge of Chelsea, and 23 defeats. I mean, you've got Thomas Tuchel's. I mean, his win percentage for PSG is up at 75%. But you look at, obviously, with respect to the amount of teams, you know, they dominate their league, and he's won trophies. He won the German Cup with Dortmund, you know, a couple of league titles. Obviously, reached the Champions League final, didn't he, with PSG? He's obviously he's a manager that I think is held in high regard, isn't he? He got linked with the United job earlier this season when Solskjaer was struggling a touch, and I'm not that surprised that it's him. He's obviously bright, he's got good ideas, but there was a sort of a thing at PSG, wasn't there, that he does sort of fall out with people. I know there was a thing with him and Kylian Mbappe, wasn't there? They had a bit of a strained relationship at times, and whether he will come in. You know, you fancy Timo Werner and Kai Havertz will be pleased with that appointment. You know, he's a type of manager, I think he'll try and get the best out of the big money recruits. But yeah, Lampard, it's difficult to say. Was it harsh? Maybe a touch. Yeah, I think it was a little bit harsh, but I'm not that surprised because, that's football and that's Chelsea. I think, unfortunately, their form, like you say, their position in the table as well, down in 9th at the moment, and we're not like we start the season with 19 games in for a lot of clubs. Obviously, Chelsea 19 games in, and well off the pace in terms of 11 points off the top of the league. What they off the top 4 at the moment, Chelsea. 5 points. It wouldn't be surprised if Tuchel came in and led them to the top 4 because they've obviously got a good group of players. But yeah, it's a tough one. Wolves, I think, will go there. They're trying obviously upset the apple cart, but I just think Chelsea 2-1 here, tight game. But changing manager might give them a boost. So Chelsea 2-1.
Yeah, I've gone Chelsea 2-0 here. I think that new manager will give them a boost for sure. I think it got to the stage where Roman Abramovich was probably thinking stick or twist now, halfway through the season, 5 points to the top 4. A new manager, could a new manager get more out of this group of players? He spent a lot of money on that group of players during the summer. And I think he simply came to the conclusion that, a new manager would. And I probably tend to agree with him. Everything you hear about Thomas Tuchel is he's just a really good, high-quality coach. But as you say, there is that thing about him falling out with people, whether that's players or the hierarchy. Obviously, Chelsea isn't the type of place you want to fall out with the hierarchy. It seems quite easy to do and quite simply done. But he tended not to do that too much at PSG. He lasted a while until a relatively bad run of form. You have to say relatively bad run because PSG, never lose that many games in a row in Ligue 1. But I think he left PSG with the highest win percentage in Ligue 1 history, which, as you mentioned, the French league, you can't read too much into that, but it is still impressive when you compare it to Frank Lampard's win percentage, which you mentioned there. So I do actually, I think it was pretty brutal and I think it was pretty harsh because Lampard's a young manager. He had shown plenty of good signs before this run, but I think Abramovich just simply looked at it and said, 9th in the table halfway through the season, can a different manager who is available at the moment get more out of these players, and I think he did, and don't think he let sentiment of Frank Lampard's connection with the club deter his decision whatsoever. So it was pretty brutal, but I can understand the reasons why Chelsea did it, and I think in 6 months' time at the end of the season they'll probably look back on that decision and think it was a decent one, because I would expect them now to build more consistency and certainly push for that top four, because they've got the players to do it. Obviously, starting in this game, we assume Thomas Tuchel will be in charge by the time this game comes along. As far as Wolves are concerned, 9 defeats from 19 games so far this season. In the Premier League, their form's been pretty poor. Their last outing was that Black Country derby, which they lost against West Brom. Before that, they lost against Everton. Before that, drew 3-3 with Brighton. And before that, lost to Man United. So their form's been really poor at the moment. Obviously, they've got now a replacement in for Raul Jimenez, which should help their goal-scoring problems. But I don't see them finding the back of the net here. I've gone for 2-0 to Chelsea. I mentioned Brighton briefly there. They're in a huge game, 17th versus 18th place against Fulham. There is 5 points separating them, but only one place in the table, and arguably one of the most important places in the table, because it's either side of that relegation dotted line. Brighton beat Leeds 1-0 in the last Premier League outing, beat Blackpool in the FA Cup, whereas Fulham have now lost 3 games in a row across all competitions. How do you see this one going, Matt?
Yeah, it's a huge game, isn't it? I think you look at Fulham's next 2, they play Brighton away, West Brom away in their next 2. So obviously 2 incredibly important games for both clubs. And like you say, I think it's reading to the Fulham's form recently. I mean, they lost against Chelsea, didn't they? Where we're down to 10 men and they played quite well, and Chelsea were fortunate. The United game, also I thought they played quite well. Loftus-Cheek had a big chance in the second half to potentially get something out of the game for Fulham, and United really had to work hard, to win that game, so that they didn't roll over in that game. The Burnley game in the Cup, I mean, I don't think as high regard as the FA Cup is held, I don't think Scott Parker would have been too disappointed to be out of that competition, because they're not going to win it, are they, Fulham? And it's another game. Their squad's not the biggest, so another games, I don't think that's too important. I think obviously looking at the next 2 for Fulham, they're huge games. And like you say, Brighton, they are a very odd team. We spoke about them quite a lot, haven't we, on this podcast? They play really good stuff. Like I say, their recent form's been good. They only lost 1-0 at City, beat Leeds, like you say, and beat Blackpool in the Cup as well. So obviously they'll play Leicester away in the Cup in the next round. So obviously there'll be changes for that game, because the Premier League is important. And you talk about Fulham's run, but it's got some tough games. Brighton, they play Tottenham at home after this one, Liverpool away. So, I mean, I say Liverpool away is a tough game, but, Burnley gone there and won, and it's gone now, isn't it? The air invincibility, Barney, from Liverpool. So, tough game. But yeah, I mean, it is an interesting one. It's, Fulham, they were the draw specialists, weren't they, before they started to lose a few. They do find it difficult to win games, but they had become difficult to beat against sides that, not the top sides. They drew with Tottenham as well, but only started losing recently. So, yeah, it's a tough one, but this screaming out 1-1 for me, I think. And I don't think, would either manager be too disappointed? Obviously, he'd be desperate to win it, but I think it's a case of don't get beat here for Fulham. So, 1-1.
Yeah, I've gone exactly the same for very similar reasons. I did initially toy with the idea of going for a Brighton win. In these sorts of games, there's quite often a winner, and if there is a winner in this one, I can see it being Brighton, because it's like they did it against Leeds. They showed some really good football, and that the goal they scored was a really nice goal. They're capable of cutting teams open like that. But as you mentioned, Fulham have just become pretty hard to beat away from home, but especially they've drawn with Tottenham in the last away game. Beat Leicester not too long ago away from home as well. And looking back at it now, only 1 defeat in their last 5 away games in all competitions. So away from home, they do seem to be improving. Those 3 defeats recently have all come at home. And as you mentioned, 2 of them against Chelsea and Manchester United, only narrowly. So no shame in those ones, really. But yeah, I think if there was going to be a winner in this one, I'd probably go for Brighton. But yeah, I've gone for a 1-1 draw in this one. There's also Everton versus Leicester. Leicester in absolutely flying form, up in 3rd in the table, 100% record so far this calendar year. Everton starting to find a bit of form themselves, though. 3 wins in a row across all competitions. Dominic Calvert-Lewin back on the score sheet against Sheffield Wednesday, which would be big for them, not only to get him back fit, but straight away to get back in the score sheet. And it's 3rd against 6th, a really interesting game. 2 teams performing really well this season. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's a really big game, isn't it? You mentioned 3rd against 6th. Obviously, Everton have got 2 games in hand over Leicester. They're 6 points behind them. But, I think that's, the fact that Everton are up where they are, we've having a couple of games in hand over Leicester, 1 over Tottenham, just above them. So, it's a huge game. This is, I've said that quite a lot this week. I did find this one quite difficult as well, and I've actually gone a few draws in this week, but I've had to go another draw here. I was struggling. Leicester, obviously without Jamie Vardy, and I say without Jamie Vardy, I don't think they rely on him now as much as perhaps they have in the past. I think obviously Maddison's come into this really good form, hasn't he? And they're getting players back from injury. Ricardo Pereira, players like that, and Harvey Barnes done a fantastic season, and like you say, 5 wins in a row for Leicester in all competitions. Are really good against Chelsea. I thought it was a really professional, dominant performance from a side that we'll expect now. I think they have that sort of confidence about them. They expect to be in and around the top 4. They've obviously got a fantastic coach who I mentioned before. He's fantastic, Brendan Rodgers. Ironically, I think if Klopp were to leave Liverpool, I think he'd be the ideal replacement for Liverpool. But he's been there before, and I just think it's been fantastic. Obviously, Leicester, they play Leeds and Fulham in the next 2 after this, so set them up quite nicely if they were to win this to go and go on a 8-9 game winning run in all competitions, which would be great for them. Everton, like you say, Calvert-Lewin back on the score sheet, good winning at Sheffield Wednesday, beat Wolves in the last Premier League game. But they did lose at home to West Ham, didn't they? Not so long ago, start of the month it was. So it is tough for Everton. I don't think that Everton are going to finish in the top 4 this season. I think 7th, 6th or 7th, they could push up. There'd be good progress under, obviously got a fantastic manager now and a really good group of players they could build for next season. So, yeah, this was tough. If Vardy was playing, I might have gone Leicester, but just 1-1 here.
Yeah, I also went back and forth on this one. I initially had it down as a 2-2 draw between them because I can see goals in this one. I can see both teams going for it. And interestingly, there's 2 teams who are probably, if you were to ask the 2 most likely teams to break into that top 4 this season outside of the big 6, it's probably these 2 teams. So it'll be a really interesting match. But then I looked at Leicester's away form this season, which has just been incredible. 1 defeat in 9 Premier League games, and that came at Anfield. In that time, they've won at Tottenham, they've won at Arsenal, they've won at Man City. They're winning these big games away from home, and obviously at home as well. That win against Chelsea last time out is a prime example when they probably went into that match as favourites, and certainly lived up to that tag. They didn't let the pressure, the different sort of pressure of going into that as favourites, expected to beat Chelsea, alter their game plan at all. Comfortable and worthy victors in that game. So they've certainly proved this season that they're up there with the big boys and can hang it with the big boys, and certainly worthy of that spot in 3rd place that they currently occupy. 4 points clear of the champions, Liverpool, at the moment, 2 points off the top of the table. They're just enjoying a remarkable season. And as good as Everton have also been this season, and key for them, I think now is they're finally back to close to a full strength squad. Luca Dean's back, Richarlison's now back. We mentioned Calvert-Lewin's back. And that's what really they've been lacking ever since that really bright start to the season when they won so many games in a row from the very start of the season. Then the injury started to come in, and then the form started to tail off a bit. So now that they're back to something close to full strength, I think they'd be confident of going on a winning run. But this is a really difficult match, and I just find it hard to back against Leicester at the moment. So I've gone for a 2-1 Leicester win in this one. The final game on Wednesday sees Manchester United take on Sheffield United. Man United, mentioned teams in really good form. They're certainly one of them. Obviously, the win against Liverpool, the less said about that, the better in the FA Cup. 3-2 victory for them to knock Liverpool out the cup and go through. Before that, 2-1 win over Fulham. They're top of the league, just 2 points clear at the halfway stage of their season. 3 defeats all season. Certainly, I'm sure you as a United fan would have bitten anyone's hand off if they offered that to you at the start of the season. And you're playing the Sheffield United side with 1 win to their name as top versus bottom. On paper, this only goes one way. How do you see it going?
I expect United to win. I've gone 2-0 to Manchester United. You mentioned obviously the Liverpool game. Very pleasing to see that, especially because I know you'd have been in pain watching that, which obviously makes it a lot better. I just think that obviously the fact that Ole Solskjaer made changes to that game, there obviously will be changes for this game. A bit of a doubt over Marcus Rashford, isn't there? A bit of a knee injury, perhaps he might not play, but obviously Fernandes come off the bench, he'll come back into the side. You fancy Eric Bailly, he might start. Obviously De Gea will come back in as well, and Fred, and they'll be freshening it up. Cavani's the interesting one at the moment. How I think the manager manages Cavani, because obviously he played 90 minutes again. He was excellent against Fulham. Obviously he was on the score sheet, and he played 90 minutes against Liverpool now. And I think he makes United so much better. He's talking about his goals. He's not like he's firing in the goals left, right, and centre, but the way he stretches opposition, occupies centre backs, gives Fernandes. It's no surprise that Fernandes plays. I think he plays a lot better with Cavani. Greenwood was was really good with Cavani. It was a little bit disappointing against Fulham, Greenwood, but really good against Liverpool. And I just think you have to play Cavani. We're not talking about, a 37, 38-year-old. He's still same age as Jamie Vardy, who plays, obviously injured at the moment, but plays most weeks for Leicester. So it'd be very interesting to see. You fancy Martial. I think it'd be easy if Rashford was out of this game, he'd bring Martial back onto the left and play Cavani again. But if Rashford is fit, Cavani might go down to the bench, Martial back leading the attack. But it's a good game for United. I think obviously Sheffield United won 3 of the last 4 in all competitions, 2 of those in the FA Cup. So it's given them a nice little bit of confidence, I think, isn't it? You talk about the FA Cup not being important to teams like Sheffield United, but it's boosted their confidence. Won 3 of the last 4 now. Obviously, Premier League form, like you mentioned, beat Newcastle, but they were well beaten by Tottenham, I thought, last time out. Lost 3-1 at home to Tottenham. So still bottom of the table. And obviously these 2 sides played, didn't they, in December. United should have won more comfortably. It ended 3-2 in the end. McGoldrick coming up late on with a goal. But United were really good in that game. And I just think, the home form of United, we mentioned it early this season. I think it has obviously improved recently in terms of, results and performances, and winning their last 3 in the Premier League now, beating Leeds, Wolves and Villa, 3 really good sides. So, yeah, especially going to Arsenal at the weekend, United, they need to win this game. They really do, because our teams around them will win. Obviously, we expect City to win, Leicester, obviously you've backed them to win as well. So they're right on United's tails. So it's a huge game for United, 2-0 home team.
Yeah, exactly the same. This just screams out 2-0 to me. I think it's going to be relatively comfortable. There was the slight element being a potential banana skin with Sheffield United winning 3 of the last 4, but as we mentioned, 2 of those have come against lower league sides in the FA Cup, and it's hard to see them getting anything from a team in such good form as United, certainly at Old Trafford. And it's hard to even back them to score, looking at not just their scoring record in general this season, 10 goals all season in 19 games is a pretty poor record, but away from home as well. I think it's 1 goal in their last 5 away games and 6 goals in 15 away games since the restart. So they've really struggled to find the back of the net away from home. And yeah, I can't see them even breaching United's defence in this game, let alone picking up a shock result. Again, I hope they do, and I hope someone takes points off United sharpish. But I can't see it happening in this one. Top versus bottom, everything, the league table, the form book, everything says a fairly comfortable United win. And yeah, we'll both agree on that one, 2-0 to United. All right, rounding off the game week is Tottenham versus Liverpool. A big game. This was obviously recently played in December when Liverpool came up with that big 2-1 win, Roberto Firmino's late goal. And then Liverpool backed that up with a 7-0 win against Crystal Palace. But since then, it's been really poor from Liverpool. 1 win in 7 games across all competitions, knocked out of the FA Cup by Man United last time out, as we just mentioned. Lost their long unbeaten home record against Burnley in the Premier League game before that. And their only victory so far this year, has come against Aston Villa's youngsters in the FA Cup. So certainly one of the biggest, I don't want to say crises, but certainly one of the worst spells of form Jurgen Klopp's had to contend with during his Liverpool career. Certainly in the last few years when Liverpool have really been up there as one of the best teams in the country and in Europe. And it'll be interesting to see how he responds to that. I think the United Cup game, although obviously it was horrible to go out into your biggest rivals, and it's never nice to lose a game or go out in the cup, I certainly took more positives from that than I did the defeat against Burnley, and even arguably the 0-0 against Manchester United before that, because there was signs that the attackers, and that was the big concern. I think any Liverpool fan would tell you a run like this in terms of not winning games that regularly has never been a million miles away in the last 2 years or so, because Liverpool have won a lot of games by 1 goal, and it doesn't take too much for those to start turning into draws. So that's never been a million miles away. But one thing you couldn't really see, particularly after that 7-0, was the attacking troubles Liverpool had in recent weeks in the Premier League, when just looked short of ideas. I think there was a stat of 87 shots since their last Premier League goal. But that's that's the headline stat. But behind that, the amount of clear chances you could probably count on your hands. There's not been that many of them. Just you're in a spell which we haven't had at Liverpool for a long time, where the fullbacks aren't playing very well, the front three's not playing very well. There's not too much depth behind them to back them up and bring them in, because Diogo Jota's still injured at the moment. But the defeat to United, I think, sort of showed signs of Liverpool getting back to it. Certainly Salah was very sharp in that game. two good finishes from him, and Liverpool could have scored more in that game. I think the difference in that game was, unfortunately, Reece Williams looked a little bit out of his depth, made a couple of mistakes, made a few rash challenges diving in. I think Joel Matip, if he was playing in that game, and he should be back for this game, which is important, I think it could have potentially been a different result in that game. But I think looking ahead to this game, it's difficult to back Liverpool in this current form. I think I do expect them to come out of this relatively soon and get back to winning ways. I'm not too worried about them in the long run. It's just whether they drop enough points in this sort of spell to rule them out of the title race. I do back them to start getting back to winning ways, probably in the game after this. But for this one, I think it's about as bad a game as they could wish to have at this stage, when they're really struggling to break through teams, because we know what Tottenham under Mourinho are going to do. They're going to sit back and try and hit with them on the break, which is exactly what United did in the 3-2 win, and that worked for them. The likes of it's exactly what Burnley did. It's exactly what a lot of teams have done recently against them. They struggle to break them down. So unless Liverpool suddenly click into gear again when in attack, which is certainly not out of the question, I wouldn't be too surprised if they go and get a draw, maybe even a win from this game. But for the first time, my invincible run of Liverpool in these prediction competitions is over. I'm unfortunately having to predict a 2-1 Tottenham win. I think they're just in good form, and I think I've got the sort of game plan which Liverpool have struggled to deal with in the last few weeks, and I can see that happening here. So yeah, 2-1 Tottenham.
I'm surprised at that, and I've actually not gone Tottenham here. I've actually gone 1-1. You mentioned Reece Williams. I mean, he's still obviously a young player. I think he's going to have a great career in the game, and it's difficult to be too harsh. But he reminded me of when we played at the Emirates Stadium, Barney, and you were out of your depth that day. And I think Reece Williams was out of his depth in that game.
Most clean sheets in Emirates Stadium history, wasn't it?
No goals though. I'm the highest scorer. But I just think, I mean, looking at Liverpool's, I won't go over what you said about Liverpool's, recent form, but I think looking ahead for Liverpool, I mean, like you said, Tottenham, West Ham, the next two Premier League games, they play Brighton, Banana Skin, Manchester City, Leicester, and then they play Leipzig in the Champions League. That's come round. That's an awful lot of football before February.
And then Everton after that as well.
Everton after that. I mean, you talk about Leipzig side. I mean, second in the Bundesliga, aren't they? Obviously not United out of the group stages, so they're excellent. Semi-finals last season as well, wasn't it? Champions League. So, they're going to be a very difficult. And if Liverpool don't sort it out, they could find themselves out the Champions League, obviously out the FA Cup now, and potentially, I still expect them to be in and around the. It's a really big period. I think we'll find out a lot. I do say that a lot. Find out a lot about teams over the next few weeks. Tottenham, obviously, off the back of the win at Wycombe Wanderers in the FA Cup, and obviously they've made changes for that game, but still, brought Kane and Son off the bench, and Ndombele, who scored a couple late on, gave him a bit of a scare. Tottenham scored 3 late on, didn't they, to make that game more comfortable than it probably would have been in general. And Tottenham, recent form, Sheffield United, they were good, obviously held at home by Fulham. And the league table at the moment, you look at 4th Liverpool, 5th Tottenham game in hand on Liverpool, only a point between them. So it's a really, really big game, and one obviously I'm looking forward to. I'm surprised you got Tottenham, to be honest. I think Tottenham, I'm still not 100% convinced. Obviously, their firepower going forward and Liverpool's issues at the back, and I don't know that that's going to sort out anytime soon in terms of Liverpool. But you do fancy Liverpool will. I think a good result is coming. Like you say, I thought they were a lot better at Old Trafford. Salah was really good. First goal in particular, I thought was excellent. That finish shows he's still good. Not shows he's still got that. He's still a top draw player, and Liverpool, I think they will get a point here. So interesting game, big game, but 1-1.
Yeah, I just think the style Tottenham will play is not really matched up to what Liverpool are struggling with at the moment. I think probably, if I'm to say when Liverpool will get back to form, I think probably in the next game against West Ham and then against Brighton. And Liverpool probably right now are better suited to playing Man City than they are Tottenham, because that game's going to be more open. There'll be more chances. It'll be more like the United Cup game, which obviously Liverpool lost but could have won on another day. So I think they'll be more suited to that one. And then the game against Leicester after that, and then Leipzig after that. I think I'm not too worried about our form carrying on into that run of fixtures. But this game just seems like a really difficult one on paper, the way Tottenham are bound to set up under Mourinho, the way he does in most Big Six matches, particularly against a team like Liverpool. So I can see us struggling with that one. So yeah, unfortunately, I've gone for Liverpool defeat though, but in a turn up for the books, Matt doesn't. But yeah, thanks, Matt. We will be back next week for our next round of fixtures, next round of predictions, sorry. You can find previews for all of these games and many more over on sportsmo.co.uk. You can subscribe to this podcast on all the usual channels, and you can also subscribe to us on YouTube to make sure you don't miss an episode. Make sure to tune back in when we are back for our next round of predictions, and we look forward to seeing you then.